Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back to the Cloudcast. Welcome back to 2017 from the massive studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Aaron, we are back for the first show of 2017.
Yep, absolutely. And trying to, for us here in Raleigh, we had an inch of snow, which means there's been no school for 3 days now.
Yeah.
So it's going to be an interesting podcast here. I'm going to be coming on and off mute all night because I have a house full of crazy kids who've been locked in houses and just really ready for them to go back to school at this point.
Yeah, exactly. So first off, congratulations. You guys, your Clemson team won the national championship last night. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a long time coming, and I stayed up way too late yelling at my TV very loudly and scaring my kids, and actually got them out of bed for the end of the game, which they maybe will appreciate someday, but they did not last night.
Yeah.
But it was good.
Yeah, so that was cool. So a couple of real quick housekeeping things. First off, want to thank everybody who has made a donation to the Krispy Kreme run, the donut run for the NC Children's Hospital. We're up to, I think, about $2,000 now in donations. We're about halfway to our goal of $4,000. So for everybody who's given everything from a few dollars to a bunch of dollars, thank you very much. We've still got about a month to go, and if you would like to help out the kids at the Children's Hospital, there's a link at the top of the podcast page on the right side, and then we'll have it in the show notes as well. So so that's all there. Very cool. Thank you very much for that. And the other thing was, we talked about this in the last show, but I think it got buried probably about 40 or 50 minutes in. People have asked about the serverless show, and the Cliff Notes version is, we are still doing the serverless show. It's just going to be embedded in the Cloudcast feed. So the easiest way you'll know is the title will say serverless in it somewhere, and it will have the little red logo that the serverless cast has instead of the white logo that you'll see typically for the podcast. So we are not abandoning it, but we did get rid of the serverlesscast.io website. So a few people pinged us about that and said, hey, where'd it go? So that's what's going on with that.
And it's very similar to what we did with the mobile cast way back when, and really for us at the end of the day, and until we really get enough traction around it and maybe spin it off into its own feed, it's actually better to just put this in the feed and eventually expand out the content in this feed over time, as opposed to building two websites and two feeds and two hosts and all the other, everything that goes with maintaining all of that. So a little bit easier on our side, and hopefully that means we'll get more shows out because of less overhead as well.
Yep. So listen, man, I think we have our two most famous guests ever tonight. So I'm kind of excited about tonight's show. Jason Edelman, welcome to the show. And Matt Oswalt, welcome to the show as well. Hey guys, how are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Good. So
I'm doing well.
Good. And you're just coming off of work, so appreciate your rushing to be able to do this. So guys, Jason, you've been on the show before. Matt, you're kind of a first timer, but I know a lot of folks know some of the cool stuff that you've been working on. Give us, a little bit of your background and then kind of what you guys are working on these days.
So basically for the last couple of years or so, I've been focused on automation generally. Maybe the first few years on network automation specifically, and now I'm branching out into sort of just general automation, working with StackStorm. So I joined the team a couple months ago, and just dealing with general automation use cases. Obviously, my background is in networking, so I'm trying to build bridges there. But automation all day.
Yeah, very very similar here. And my background is predominantly networking. 10 plus years in networking. The past several years, kind of make that shift into automation, software development, and now really focus on bridging that gap, really helping customers adopt newer technologies and just being able to minimize inefficiencies in their network operations.
Yeah, no, it's cool. We wanted to get both of you guys on here. There's some other stuff we're going to get into, but you guys are, you're neck deep in automation, and we kind of wanted to get just a state of what's going on with automation. So I'm glad to have both of you on. Let's start off just at a real high level. Both of you guys kind of come from the networking side of the world, but you're involved with a lot of different aspects now, and the lines are kind of blurring. Like, what are the big trends that you're both seeing in the marketplace around automation, as well as kind of the areas that you're focused on skill wise, or kind of customer trends that you're tracking?
Right. So I'll take that one first. And so to day to day right now, I'm very focused. Work for small consultancy. Doing boutique stuff. Very focused on network automation. So helping customers look at ramping up skill sets. So it could be doing training sessions as well as traditional professional services, but really targeting network automation. So in general, the biggest trend is that I believe 2017 is going to be the year where it starts to go a little bit more mainstream, right? Several of us folks have been looking at these technologies, larger enterprises, carriers and whatnot have been looking at these technologies, but the general trend from a high level is, as I talk to customers, is that there's more awareness internally that things aren't as ideal as they should be or could be when it just comes to doing network operations. I think for a long time, as you manage network devices via, let's say, SSH, via the command line, there's I would say still a lot of folks out there that still don't see things as a problem. And I think the biggest trend is realizing that there's a problem with how we do network management and how we do network operations today.
So Jason, the last time you were on the show, and it's been a little while, I want to say maybe it's been, I don't know, more than a year. You were working at a large, what people would call a VAR, value-added reseller, and you were working on some side stuff. And you were just kind of giving us the, hey, I'm ambitious, I'm trying to learn this stuff. You've actually turned all that into a business, with your business Network to Code. Talk a little bit about, because you and I talk from time to time, sort of off the show and everything. Talk a little bit about not just the trainings that you're doing, but the sort of online web stuff that you kind of got into and how you kind of got into that whole thing, because it's a cool service that people can kind of get engaged with, but it's also cool how you went about figuring it all out.
Yeah, no, I think it was actually well over 2 years ago. So when I left my last employer 2.5 years ago, I believe it's in the next few months, it's about 2.5 years. And so it was one of those things where, some side work, led into me leaving, starting Network to Code. And now there's, several of us here working on these technologies. And it was just trying to foresee what's needed out there in the industry. And I'll say, when you look at traditional manufacturers, traditional integrators and VARs, one of the common themes is what drives them today is selling hardware.
Yeah.
And and to be honest, it's selling hardware, design architecture, and implementation, right? Once you get it installed, though, like the real challenge is there with how do you manage that day to day? And I was convinced that there needed to be a newer company to help customers deploy technologies. So that's what Network to Code is. But in general, there's a few different pillars that we're focused on, and you hit on almost all of them. But one of them is training. So we offer training courses, things like that. The other one is services, and the other one is more, I'll say, quasi productized services. And one of them is what we call labs on demand. So you can browse to the website and spin up, let's say, an instance of a certain router type or firewall type, and be able to within somewhere between 10 and 12 minutes spin up either one node, or it could be 10, 15, 20 nodes, to lower the barrier to get started with automation. That was the initial goal, because right now to get started, you either need a physical lab or you need to download virtual machines on your laptop and spin them up. And there are tools and orchestrators that help even doing that. But for a lot of folks with no background in automation at all, or it could be a financial company in New York, they lock down their laptop and you can install hypervisors like VirtualBox. So our goal was, I'll say, to be, let's say, the Amazon for networking, as an example. We want a self-service portal within a few minutes, launch a topology that can be used for testing automation. And that sort of, evolved from there as the foundation of that. We've even had conversations with larger organizations to be used in larger pipelines to automatically spin up a network topology, run tests, and decommission it. But in general, we have a on-demand platform that allows folks of all types to spin up topologies, and they could be for testing or for learning, or we could also mimic production environments. It could be a large-scale WAN, spin up X amount of nodes, to be able to certify and test. It could be custom scripts, custom code, or it could even be a commercial product that you want to test on a topology. Otherwise, it's just, it's very hard to do that today because there aren't physical lab environments that a lot of customers have to be able to run, I would say, test at scale where that makes sense before they roll it out to production.
No, it's very cool. I know for me, thinking back to when I was taking my CCIE, I would have loved something like this rather than having to physically drive into Cisco offices, go in their labs, spend all day Saturday and Sunday, pulling cables and plugging stuff in and hoping boxes were available. And so I love the idea, and I love it, especially from the perspective of hearing a million people tell these horror stories on Twitter about how their home lab blew up or their electric bill was too much, or not being able to get gear. So that part is very, very cool. Aaron, I think we're starting off 2017 good because at least somebody has fire trucks or police sirens in the background. So hopefully nobody's getting arrested.
I apologize. I live in an urban area, so every once in a while you'll hear a fire truck or a police car drive by.
No, it's
so
cool.
Go ahead. I just wanted to build on what Jason was saying. Like, one really cool reason why what he's doing is so valuable is because, and this is one of the maybe to take a step back and look at the big picture again. You asked what trends we're seeing in customer environments. I'm seeing a lot of interest in breaking from the traditional, and I say traditional again from a networking perspective. The networking industry is so accustomed to using black box, either software or hardware, and there are advantages to that. But it's just so skewed towards that side of the spectrum that if there's any sort of either technical issue with the solution or maybe it doesn't match exactly what you're trying to do on your infrastructure, there's just really not much you can do about it. So these products and these automation, quote automation tools that we've been using for network management just haven't really done much for us beyond what we call up-down management, right? Okay, cool, our network is actually blinking lights, but what is it actually doing? How are applications actually performing across it? And so in terms of trends, I'm seeing a lot of customers, especially now that I'm exposed to a lot of non-networking teams, server teams, applications teams as part of my work at Stackstorm. There's just a lot of interest in the network industry to become part of that customer base that's really interested in taking on more and more of the pie. That's not to say everybody that I work with is all open source everywhere. Obviously, that's not the case. It's just happening. It's just going in that direction slightly. I think it's just very, very interesting and empowering to see customers try to take more and more of the pie instead of saying, here's a paycheck, give me a black box, and yeah, that's good enough.
Yeah. No, that's cool. And it's nice to have the two of you guys because Jason's on the East Coast. He's up in New York City. You're out on the West Coast in the Bay Area. Like, give us a contrast because I know both of you guys get a chance to see the industry from, different geographies and different stuff. But, what are you seeing out on the West Coast that maybe the rest of the world isn't seeing, or stuff that you kind of contrast to when you deal with folks in other parts of the country and stuff?
So actually, I'm in Portland. And
okay.
From this area, actually, everything's pretty much just defined by beer and coffee. So that's probably not a very valuable perspective. No, I'm only kidding. So yeah, I mean, essentially, obviously, Portland, it's no Bay Area, but it's a very tech savvy area. There's a lot of companies based here that it's sort of like a mini Bay Area, if you will.
Right.
One big difference, I used to live in Ohio. I can tell you one huge difference moving out here is just simply the number of meetups that are going on. Like in Ohio, I'd be lucky if I could get, maybe one meetup every few weeks on a topic that was interesting to me. Quite a few more than that on some other topics. But here it's like I could go out every night and learn about something that's kind of core to my job. And that's crazy to me.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's very, very cool.
Yeah, Brian and I experienced that very much. The same thing with being in North Carolina, and then when we go to like a conference out in the Bay Area or something like that, and we'll often, you get like one a month, two a month here in North Carolina, but you go to the Bay Area, you just kind of pull up the Meetup app and where are we going to go tonight, kind of thing. So it is amazing the difference when you get that density of technology, if you will, because you get positives of something like that ability to learn and absorb yourself in tech, but then you also sometimes the bubble forms, if you will. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely positives and negatives to both of them, without a doubt.
Yeah. Now, Matt, you've been at some pretty, you've been at medium-sized companies, but you've also been at some big web scale companies, recently, and you're working on open source stuff. Like, are you seeing things, between those two sort of worlds that you say, hey, there is some commonality here that you'd kind of, pass along to other people in terms of just, best common practices, or is the web scale world and sort of the, I don't know, mid-size enterprise, mid-market type of company, are they just so different that you kind of can't compare the two of them?
Well, there are, if you go all the way down into the weeds and talk about implementations, yeah, they can be pretty unique, and not a lot of that is shall we say, readily reusable to the Joe's Crab Shack or something like that. But I think if you can think a little more abstractly, there are some common fundamentals that I've thought about that I've tried to apply in my practices ever since leaving, like eBay, for instance, is a company I used to work for. So if you think about things like, okay, I want to build an automation system, and I'm kind of new to this. Where do I start? Well, one of the really cool things to focus on is thinking about doing automation in a very autonomous way. That's one of the ways that the way that we were doing things at eBay, which is different from when I looked at some of the older companies that I worked for. We wrote scripts. Scripts, that's nothing new. Everybody writes scripts, but just one of the common things that you do at that scale is you can't just write scripts and run them from your laptop. You have to build software that's totally autonomous. You have to build software that gets its input from other software whenever you can. Otherwise, it just simply won't scale. And by scale, I don't necessarily mean actual physical scale. I also mean it will break because of inconsistencies. I mean, that's the biggest reason we do automation in general, right? It's very rarely because we're so big we need to automate. It's usually because our human involvement is kind of unnecessary, and it causes issues, and in many cases revenue loss. So that's the real reason we do it. And if you're building software that's autonomous, you avoid some of that stuff.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I mean, did you find that that's just the kind of the principle that you've now adopted, or was that because you reached a certain sort of tipping point in scale? Because I know a lot of people, maybe not at the largest companies, will sort of say, hey, the investment and the time put into doing automation, feels like a lot of work for something that, I just kind of do on a day-to-day basis. So it's not worth,
sure.
Kind of taking away from your day-to-day activities. Was there a tipping point for you, or was it just kind of the culture of where it evolved to make it better?
Honestly, like for me, this probably isn't the sexiest way to describe it, but for me, it's just about demystifying the whole process. We talk about automation like it's this whole, grandiose vision of what you'll be like in 5 years. But in reality, if you actually start down the process, you realize it's just very iterative. I'm sorry, but there just is no way that I'll accept the judgment that I don't have, no automation is not worth it. Everybody has something that they do all the time that if they automated that, it would either make their system more stable or it would save them more time, things like that. And that's what automation is all about. It's not really like, I want to build this like huge machine that just makes me not have to work at all. It's very iterative. It starts with little scripts and you write, for instance, Ansible playbooks to automate network things, or maybe write a little Python to consume an API. That's where it starts. So yeah, it kind of demystifies the whole process. And this was about 5 years ago for me, where I was like, this actually isn't that big of a deal. It's just sort of going through the steps and thinking about my system very algorithmically and saying, that actually is pretty easy to do. Let's just knock that out real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in that I totally agree. And is like the biggest hurdle is just getting started for those out there, because there's oftentimes when you go down the path of automation, let's say you do have one of those tasks you do every day, you know how to do it. You can do it manually, and it can take you X amount of minutes or hours, but you just know how to get it done. When you start to automate that process, it might seem more challenging up front, but the reward is going to be there in the end, and that's the part to kind of foresee where things can go. Because no doubt about it, what I always see is, people start down this path, and it could be just installing the right packages or putting things in the right directories, and just based on bandwidth and resource availability, a person might not have hours on ends to do this. So if the install fails, they just kind of throw it away. And so the biggest thing to do is just kind of stick with it. There's growing pains along the way, but the reward and the payoff is definitely there.
Yeah. Now, Jason, you're obviously a lot of the focus of your time is getting people trained up, teaching them, educating them. What does that journey look like for people these days? I mean, is it getting pushed by their business? Are they doing it out of their own curiosity? Had they already tried stuff like Ansible or Chef and Puppet, and they kind of struggled with it, and they're looking for guidance? Like, what's a I don't know, what's a typical engagement for you look like these days, or what's the motivation for a lot of people these days?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I guess there's two things. One is the training, and one is the actual when we help them with deployments. But if I focus on the training, the I would say the want varies, and you can there's typically a big a big gap in there. But lately a lot of our engagements have been private. We do public courses, typical training company type stuff, right? Sign up, one person, two person from a company, shows up. But the majority of our engagements have been, private engagements with larger enterprises where they want to rev up a full team with baseline skills. So I'll say, we'll help them go from 0 to 60 on a variety of skills. And as of late, there's been several folks within senior management that say we need to ramp up the team with these skills, because there's one or two people on the team that have been going above and beyond, and this could be maybe for the past 2-3 years, and they've become in-house experts with automation. Now they need to ensure they can scale internally, and they're not relying on just maybe 1 or 2 or 3 people. All right. So a lot of times when we do these types of engagements for training, there's the 1 or 2 people that help quarterback the engagements, but it's to really level set the larger team to get baseline skills to help them start that journey. Because like I was saying, one of the hardest parts is just that getting started. So we hope that a week of training is enough of a jump start where they could, let's say the following Monday or day 6 to continue down that path. And we've even had engagements where, talking to engineers, they've actually felt where peers of theirs were getting favored if they were aware of how to write basic scripts and let's say write a Ansible playbook as an example. So there's really I would say no commonality, but it really differs. There's some of that. There's some engineers that just know that they should be learning these skills and adopting it because they know what they're doing if they're managing a large retail environment. There's a lot of I would say an iterative process there to manage their devices. And then there's top down. I think in the past few months we've seen a little bit more of this than a year ago, but I think as things are becoming more mainstream from a, let's call it, media perspective on automation, there's a lot more, hey, top down, go learn this without necessarily an outcome in mind. Just, hey, we know we're going to need to reskill and retool ourselves. So start ramping up, and then we'll regroup as a team to see where we can leverage what we just covered from a learning perspective. Yep. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And question really for both of you is, so how much, when you are looking at automation, how much of this is software elements like SDN or some of these other things, and how much of this just evolves from existing systems that are already there in the environment, and you're just basically trying to solve an existing problem in an environment versus, say, a greenfield problem, or trying to stand up something new? How much of it is old versus new these days?
Yeah. I mean, in my experience, it's much more on the latter side. I mean, you'll find places for products like that, like what you described, to be inserted in various places. But generally speaking, the customer will always try to evaluate that product within their existing workflows. They'll always try to say, how does this fit within my existing environment? And the good thing is a lot of the frameworks that Jason and I work with, and even some of the custom stuff, are mindful of that. Like, for instance, with Ansible, for instance, you can actually develop a module that effectively wraps your existing workflows. I know we can do this in StackStorm as well with Actions. So there's just various ways that you can do that. I think that the key there obviously is that the customers have those workflows really well defined, and then of course that they have a mind, that they're mindful about what they're bringing into it to make sure that workflow is maintained.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned that those 3 key letters that I think Matt and I have come, You
notice I didn't say it.
yeah, but you mentioned SDN, and it's funny, coming from my past, working vendors, large integrators, there was always a large focus on the type of equipment that was being deployed, type of architecture. And now, I'll be the first to admit, I really, really care a lot less about what's currently deployed And, it's really about, how do we use what you currently have or what you're going to purchase, doesn't really matter, and help automate it or operationalize it, whatever we want to call it. But again, going back to that whole process of starting that journey is, sometimes we might hear, well, we're going to wait for an API on this device, or we're going to wait for this. But, the bottom line is there are things that can be done, potentially one-time costs to develop a little bit of software. Maybe it's an action or plugin for Stackstorm. Maybe it's a module for Ansible, whatever it might be, where once that we have a little shimmer wrapper created, then everyone else on the team can start leveraging that. And those folks will care a little bit less on how the connection mechanism, whatever connection mechanism is used. So the bottom line is a lot of what I'm seeing in terms of, day-to-day engagements with customers is really focused on the existing and not necessarily just leveraging, call it modern architectures, if you will.
Yeah. The harder problem is making sure that the customer knows what their workflows are and that it's defined somewhere. Because
exactly.
if they have a piece of kit that needs to be integrated with, we can call it a simple matter of programming, right? Not always simple, but it's basically code can fix that. What the harder problem is that the team is on the same page with what actually goes on when X happens. When X event happens, what is the remediation? How do we actually go through this? And more and more, I'm finding that is a conversation that has to take place way, way among silos. This is no longer a conversation just for network engineers or just for server admins. Not even close.
Yeah. No, it makes sense.
Makes sense.
Yeah. No, and it makes sense. I think it's always interesting when you get a chance to talk to folks who live and breathe this stuff, and they're like, look, the reality is, no matter what the press and media say, like there's a ton of stuff that still exists that people want to take, keep getting value out of, and not everything needs to be sort of greenfield, cloud native, whatever the latest buzzword is. You can do a lot of things with existing equipment and or software and a little bit of just modern sort of thinking, principled sort of thinking, structured sort of thinking, and so forth. So that's cool to hear that's going on. So let's talk about the other sort of elephant in the room, and why we mentioned that you guys are probably the most famous guests we've ever had on the show. Give us, so you guys were prominently sort of featured this last week on Reddit, but give us a little bit of background, like walk us through, first off, for anybody who doesn't know what Tech Field Day is, give us what that is. I know some people know what it is, but tell us what Tech Field Day is, and then tell us how your involvement with that got you guys on Reddit and just absolutely blew up this last week.
So I'll let Jason, my quote project manager, answer the Tech Field Day question.
Program manager.
Oh, sorry,
nice.
Program manager. Yeah, so just to fill that gap, we've been given like 10 different titles by Reddit. Program manager being one of Jason's. I think mine was something even more offensive. So, yeah.
Well, I do want to call this out very quickly, though. So first of all, Mr. Foskett probably loves the both of you for this and the Tech Field Day out of it. But I also do want to say kudos for having the socket plane sticker on your laptop. That's an obscure one.
What's better is that I have a spare somewhere around here.
That was a very limited run of stickers. Ex-guests of the show way back when, and we have a couple stickers floating around that are like super rare ones that hardly ever given out. And the first thing I did is I went and studied all the stickers. I'm like, oh, socket plane. But anyway, that's a quick side thing. But go ahead and tell us about first of all Tech Field Day, and then your impressions of the Reddit thread, and what's the timeline like? When did you guys find out? And when did it start blowing up? And how much did you guys read? And when did you kind of go, oh gosh, it's Reddit, I'm going away?
Yeah, so I guess I'll try to do some of that. But so Tech Field Day, for those that aren't aware of who they are, Tech Field Day is an independent event for what they call IT influencers. So they kind of bring together vendors and independent thought leaders. So it's for a week out in the Bay Area. It could be awesome based on technology, but it could be for 3 or 4 days straight where they fly in anywhere from 10 or 12 bloggers, thought leaders, get them in front of 8 to 10 different vendors, and during this week there's live streaming events where the vendors present on a newer product, technology, whatever they want to present on. And the outcome of this for again the conversation for here on Reddit was Matt and I participated in a Tech Field Day event, which was networking field day. I'm guessing it was 10 or 12. I don't know. Maybe it was 10. I forget which one it was, but I believe it was over a year ago, where somebody must have watched a video. Maybe they took a screen capture of both of us sitting, side by side, and posted it to Reddit, and they called it was there are two types of IT techies. So there was Matt on the left, myself on the right. And again, so the person who posted this, I have no idea who originally, I don't think Matt does either, who posted this picture. And I've said it on Twitter. I actually never, I don't have a Reddit account still to this day. So I had friends outside of IT texting me this picture saying, I made it to the front page of Reddit. Not even sure what that meant, but then I started to read the comments that were on there, over 1,000 comments.
Oh, and they're all bad.
On this picture. So Matt, feel free to comment on those comments. But
well, it's funny. So yeah, basically, like they're trying to basically overanalyze both of us, both of our careers and our persons, just from this photo, which is amusing. They effectively said Jason was a program manager of some kind, because Jason likes to dress up, and there's nothing wrong with that. He sits there with his suit and his nice Lenovo laptop and whatever. So they're making judgments on that, and then they look over at me and. Well, yep, with no stickers. Then you look over at me, and then they're, sticker-laden laptop, and I'm disheveled. I have this huge mop of hair, and they're basically calling me, because I have so many stickers, there's no way I actually know what I'm doing. So obviously, I like to think I know what I'm doing, and of course, Jason's brilliant. He's running his own company, so it was just kind of funny to read through those comments and see these many people weighing in on what they think we're all about. And then only one of them discovered that one of us has a blog. So it's like, out of 1,000 comments, it's like, oh, somebody did their research, and they're like, yeah, that guy's okay.
Yeah, and then Stephen Foskett is in the back, and lots of comments about Stephen, and he actually popped into the thread and was like, hey, that's me, and hilarity ensued from that as well. So
well, my takeaway is that I apparently am the spitting image of a guy named Q from Impractical Jokers, and I looked him up. It's uncanny.
So this thing got like, I don't know, 800,000 views and like 1,500 comments or somewhere around there. Like, has there been anything kind of like, internet famous that you guys have experienced just, in the last week or so? Like, like what in the hell is this? Or have people reached out to you, or has it just been sort of one of those like moments in time and, it moves on?
For me, it burned bright and short. It was sort of midday when somebody sent me a message on Twitter saying, hey, you're on the front page of Our Funny, and I was like, oh, cool. And so Twitter was crazy that day, and obviously the comments were rolling in. But then I woke up the next morning, and I was not magically in my villa out in Lake Como, Italy. So I'm not sure what went wrong there. But what about you, Jason?
I would agree. The same. I like round numbers. I think right now we're at about 802,000 views. It would be great if we can get to 1 million. I think that would be pretty awesome. What that would mean for us, probably nothing, but then we can say we have 1 million views on Reddit. So I hope over the next, it looks like we're slowly increasing. Now we're at maybe a couple hundred or 1,000 after the first day or two. But if we can maybe through the Cloudcast get to 1 million, I think that would be great.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely we'll post a link to the picture and to the Reddit thread, and I mean, if nothing else, you guys have got, you can definitely put together like talks at a whole bunch of shows for the next 4 or 5 months, like how to get to 1 million hits on Reddit, or my life as a God. There were so many good sort of descriptions that there was the Matt is a homeless guy living in his parents' basement to,
yep.
Jason is Jason's a project manager who's going to drive you crazy. I mean, they did get sort of mean, and they hit on every stereotype possible about the clean cut guy versus the non-clean cut guy versus the person who's sitting there eating chips. And I mean, they dissected it like the Zapruder film. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, my favorite was they said the person on the right has the face of an a-hole. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I do. Maybe I do.
You've got resting a-hole face. Yeah,
exactly.
Well, that's cool, guys. Listen, obviously there's tons to what's going on around automation, but it's awesome to have you guys on and kind of give us the lowdown and the reality of what people are facing. Just where can people kind of catch up with you, find out what's going on? Maybe where you're speaking or the next event you might be at. Like how do people track you down if they want to ask questions or kind of engage with the products and technology you guys are working on?
Sure. So for me, this is Jason. You can find me on Twitter at jedelman8. Personal blog is jedelman.com. You can also find a lot of great content at the company's website, networktocode.com.
Cool.
And this is Matt. I am on Twitter as Meerdin, Mierdin. I also blog at keepingitclassless.net. In terms of conferences I'm speaking, I'm trying to speak at a few meetups here in Portland, but I know that in about April-May timeframe, I'll be heading out to Vegas to speak at Interop. So if you want to catch me there talking about some network stuff, automation stuff, just head over there to, I think, interopitx.com. And just Google Interop, you'll find it.
Very cool. Very cool. I found out that I'm doing a talk on some container stuff and some Kubernetes stuff at Interop this year, so I definitely have to catch up and get a beer and stuff. Listen, guys, any last words or sort of guidance for folks around the stuff you're working on, or just cool things to go take a look at?
From my side, don't fear the unknown. Just dive in. If it's automation, whatever it might be, newer technology, I think there's no better time to be in technology, and a lot of things are changing. So don't fear it, embrace it, and jump in.
Yeah, I mean, same here. Just jump in. Not everybody learns hands-on, but I think it's still the best way to get started, because if anything, it'll demystify the process for you. And just remember, it's not just for Facebook, it's not just for Google. There's actually a lot of benefits to even small companies for automation. Consistency, uptime, that kind of thing.
Very cool. Very cool. And listen, folks, go check out Jason's the Off the Network to Code page, the stuff where you can do all the online training and labs and stuff, especially if you're a home lab person that's frustrated with your boxes breaking down, or you just you want to make it simple on yourself. So it's a very cool setup. So Aaron, you want to take folks home for the first time in 2017 and tell folks where they can reach out to us or find us. Oh, and hey, by the way, remind them to give us some ratings back on iTunes.
I was actually just going to mention that. I'm glad you said that. So one of the big things we'd love to do here in 2017 is really, we want to build up some of the iTunes reviews. There are iTunes reviews that are out there, but they are actually, the podcast being a few years old, the reviews are a few years old at this point. So if you like the show and want to give back a little bit, if you don't mind, take a little time and go out and give us a review. And also, that being this time of the year again, please consider donating to the Krispy Kreme Run. Just go to thecloudcast.net. And the Krispy Kreme logo is in the upper right-hand portion of the page. And we'd also love to get some more feedback. It's been a little while since we've gotten some feedback. So the email address is, of course, show@thecloudcast.net and at thecloudcastnet on Twitter as well. So definitely hit us up, please. And look forward to a great 2017, and we'll talk to everyone next week.
Thank you for listening to The Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.